Okay, so this is the Joint Homeless Subcommittee meeting of April 7th, 1921. This is a call to order. First order of business is to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Okay, Tyler.
All right, I can lead it. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of
America
America,
and to the republic
For
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 which
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation under God,
Visible.
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice.
for all.
Okay, roll call.
Okay, subcommittee member Bowden,
Here,
subcommittee member Leffler,
Aye.
vice chair Ewing,
Here,
and chair Walsh.
Here. Okay, special order of business presentations. And yes, we'll look for the next meeting date and time unless there's something that anybody thinks might happen during this meeting that might cause us to change that date and time. So anybody know of anything?
no,
I don't think so. All right, Adam, you're good at telling us what's available. So for May,
Yes, chair. So if we're looking at about a month away, that would put us either in the first or second week of May. The first week of May, the availability there would be, I would recommend 2 p.m. on Wednesday, May 5th, or anytime on Tuesday, May 11th is also good.
okay, I can do either of those dates. How about you guys?
I would be better on the 11th.
yeah, me too, 11th is better.
Okay, let's do the 11th then. What time
11th
did
at
you
3 o'clock,
recommend there, Adam?
3 o'clock?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, okay.
So since there's consensus on this, I recommend when we adjourn, we can take the vote on the date when it's reiterated at that time.
Okay.
Great. Okay, sounds good. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the March 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second. We can do a vote. Everybody can just raise their hand, I think.
That works?
Like everybody approves. Next order of business is the oral and written communication. Adam, do we have any oral or written communications to us?
We have not received any comments for oral communications for this meeting.
Okay. We'll move on to item 7, which is the reviews and recommendations. There's none that I'm aware of. And move down to item 8, the new business. And the consideration of ordinances to prohibit on public property shopping carts and storage of private property. So Adam, maybe you can give us some backstory on this.
Yes, Chair, I'm more than happy to do so. All right, so the item before you is based on direction from the City Council, and it is to consider whether, and then this is in concert with the Public Safety Committee, to consider and submit a recommendation to the City Council in June or July of 2021 regarding one, an ordinance to prohibit shopping carts on sidewalks, streets, and public property, and 2, an ordinance that prohibits storage of private property on sidewalks, streets, and public properties. At this time, essentially the concept here is that the recommendation would from the subcommittee and the public safety committee would be to let the council provide your recommendation of whether that should occur or not. Based on the council meeting, it wasn't necessarily established that the ordinances would, if they're recommended for adoption, would be something created by the Joint Homeless Subcommittee or the Public Safety Committee. So at this time, what I can do is cover the municipal codes that to some extent already address these two topics, and then open it up to the subcommittee's discussion as to what, if anything, further might benefit the city. So with that, I will start with shopping carts, and if there are any questions along the way, please stop me. So the city has a municipal code, a chapter, it's SCMC 8.60, entitled shopping carts, and it regulates shopping carts as for those businesses that provide them to their customers. And essentially what this section does is it requires a notice, a sign to be placed on shopping carts that identifies who owns the shopping cart, and then also provides information related to the state law, which basically says that the unauthorized removal of shopping carts from a retail establishment, including the parking lot of that retail establishment, is a violation of state law. Further on, it provides a mechanism for the city to remove those carts found that have been removed, and then there's at the very end there's a kind of I'll call it an alternate method of dealing with this, which is if the businesses enter into a cart retrieval service, then the city essentially can just call that business's cart retrieval service to get those carts. So the way that this particular section of code is implemented today, for example, if we got a call about a shopping cart that was in the public right of way, we city staff are aware of these cart retrieval services, and if the cart belonged to one of the businesses that have this cart retrieval service, which most of them do, we would just call that cart retrieval service. They would come and pick up that cart. Once in a while, we do find shopping carts that are that don't have that placard that's required, or they're unidentifiable as to which business owns them. In those cases, what we would do is we have two options. We can either just go pick up the cart and take it to our city yard, and if we know who the owner is, we can contact them and tell them to come pick it up. Or we can provide notice to the owner, and they have 3 days to pick up the cart. If they don't pick up the cart, then we can actually fine the business for failing to pick up their own carts. The issue as far as removing carts from the public right-of-way that exists today is that if that cart is full of personal belongings and is occupied by somebody, city staff and the Orange County Sheriff's Department are not, we do not have the practice of removing people's items from those carts and taking those carts. What we would do in that case is we would cite the person in possession of that cart with, and this is the Orange County Sheriff's Department that would do this. They will cite based on that state law against the unauthorized removal of shopping carts. So that's the extent of what the code is today, and I would anticipate that a prohibition of shopping carts in practice may not add a whole lot to what we're currently capable of doing, with the exception that it wouldn't matter what businesses own something. If somebody has a shopping cart and they're in public, then the violation would just simply be that somebody has a shopping cart in the public right of way. The other benefit to having an outright prohibition of shopping carts would be that it would be a municipal code, which code compliance and the park rangers would then have authority to enforce. Since the carts right now are technically under the jurisdiction of state law, it would require the Orange County Sheriff's deputies to enforce that. But this would allow the deputies, code compliance, and the park rangers to address shopping carts if it was a municipal code violation. So with that, that's all my information about shopping carts, and I'm ready for any questions.
Adam, I may have misunderstood you, but on that 8.60 municipal code, doesn't it, so that just requires that a sign is on the shopping cart that says who it belongs to. The addition here would be you can't use it for personal property use and such. Is that correct? And take it from the property? Is that?
Well, what the existing code is doing is relying on state law, which already makes it a crime to remove a shopping cart from a retail establishment.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there's already a law about that. The difference is who can enforce that law. It rests entirely with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Our code does allow for us to take carts, but as far as enforcing the prohibition against taking carts, my code compliance and the park ranger staff are not, we don't have the legal authority to issue citations based on state law.
I see.
Well, the issue here is under the penal code, the city employees can't enforce the penal code, so it's up to the sheriffs. And I'm not sure. I'd love to know how many citations Orange County sheriffs have issued regarding that penal code, but I imagine it's very, very few. So if we had a municipal code section that mirrored the penal code, then we could at least have the park rangers or code compliance have the power to issue citations. The way the situation is now, I don't think there's much of a deterrent. I don't think we're going to address the issue if we leave it as it is. Otherwise, the city council wouldn't have forwarded it to us if there wasn't a problem. So we need to address the problem, and ostensibly, I think that looking at a municipal code section is the only way to further address our problem.
And I staff would agree with your assessment on that. Two things I will say: it's a business and professions code section, not the penal code, but it would expand authority for city staff to address it. I can say that a couple of years ago there was a much larger problem with this. So the amount of citations issued for this has gone down. But in recent memory, my staff at least is aware of some of the citations issued by the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Okay. Well, I think even expanding on that, it's kind of like I don't know if anybody's noticed, but in the T-zone down on Delmar Street, they have installed armrests on the benches. And while this certainly will not solve the problem of homeless people monopolizing the benches, I think it will make a positive impact, at least reducing the amount of that, which shows that the city is constantly trying to at least, manage the problem. And I think this is the same thing. We'll have a municipal code section in the issue of shopping carts with a bunch of people's property rolling down the street. It won't, but at least it will give us another management tool to deal with it. And the optics are that the city is continually trying to manage the issue for the quality of life in the city. So my feeling is that we address this issue. I don't think we need to put it all on staff. I think we have one of our 2 people subcommittees work with Adam on sitting down and getting the wording and the practicality hammered out, that it won't take much time, and bring it back to this entity and see if we agree and approve and want to move it to council.
I think that was my question, is if there's any proposed language for this change in the city ordinance. I see in our agenda, it says prohibiting shopping carts on sidewalks, streets, and public property. I'm not sure if that would be the direction of the language, or if it would be more in line with the state law that prohibits removal of shopping carts from businesses. Adam, do you know which direction the language would kind of aim to go with that?
Yeah, so at this point, we're essentially just looking for direction from the Joint Homeless Subcommittee and the Public Safety Committee as to whether this is something that the city council should consider. The drafting of the language will come later. However, I agree with Subcommittee Member Leffler that the language for this is probably going to match or be very close to the state law, if not close to other cities' codes that have already adopted something similar. And so we'll get more direction on that as we move this along. The next stop after this subcommittee reviews this would be the Public Safety Committee, and so we'll have some more information on what the feedback loop on this is.
Adam, I don't know if this is the best time to say this or wait till after we talk about the next one, but since Bill and I, and you guys will hear about this in a little bit, are a little bit stymied in the data area, we have a little bit of wiggle room to maybe look into this for our committee and bring it back, at least either to the next meeting or at some kind of meeting with the joint, with the Public Safety Committee. So, we can look into, kind of the details of it. That's what I would propose to do. So, Bill, are you okay with that? Or?
Well, sure. Yeah. Is there any intent to deal with, let's say a homeless person is pushing a relatively full cart full of their possessions and really getting in the way of people, let's say on the sidewalk? Are we trying to deal with something like that in terms of what to do with homeless possessions? Or do you want more meat in that kind of?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. All I can tell you is what staff's practices are, and currently, even when the sheriffs issue them a citation for unauthorized removal of a shopping cart, which is essentially what the law prohibiting the same would be, they're not going to take the personal items from the person with the shopping cart. They're just going to issue them a citation for the violation of that law. If there's a desire to remove that item from somebody's person, there would need to be some more discussion amongst enforcement staff within the city and the council to really determine how that would actually be accomplished.
Yeah, well, I'm not advocating taking anything away from anybody. I guess I'm more interested in what this new regulation would say about. I mean, would you take this? You want to get it off the sidewalk, obviously. Who would move it off the sidewalk, and then would the homeless person, let's say, would still have rights to whatever's in that shopping cart?
I was going to ask kind of a similar, where Bill's going on this, and I can tell you that best practices in other cities where they have addressed this, where they do take the shopping carts And if whatever the person can't carry, other cities bag it, label it, take it to a secure storage place with that person's name on it so they can come and claim it. And that's what I was going to ask, kind of looking forward if we went in that direction, which if you're going to remove the shopping carts from the sidewalks and the nuisance, this is where we are kind of going. Adam, do you think that the city might have the resources to do something like that if they took a shopping cart?
Well, the resources necessary to store personal belongings is something we already have and we already do. At the city's yard, we have a couple storage containers, and periodically we come across items that are abandoned, and we'll collect those belongings, we'll leave a notice, and we'll store them. So if a similar situation was to occur with a shopping cart, we have mechanisms in place where we would be able to collect all of those items and get them out of the public right of way.
So there's already something on the code that allows you to be able to do that, to package them up in some way and get them off the sidewalk.
Yes, in fact, the next item we're talking about, I will go over that section of the code that gives us that authority to do so.
Some of these carts are pretty full, but I've been knocked off the sidewalk several times. With some of these carts, and
collected
are hard
of items from people.
And you can't just take things away from people rather easily. But so, okay, very good.
Yeah,
I can tell you that in my speaking with other cities and what they're doing and everything like that, many of them have expanded their municipal code sections to address these very kind of things. So because it's one, like Adam said, the city personnel can then issue the citations. And so they have a lot more control on how that's happening. And two, it's a lot more effective in dealing with the homeless, because often when they're cited for something, it goes to really the municipal courts, superior courts and stuff like that, where a lot of these cities have created a, what do they call it? But I'll say it's like a municipal code court section.
They have homeless court right now in San.
Right. I didn't want to label it like that, but that's basically.
They call it homeless court.
Yeah. And so these things can go there where the people who are violating these things come under the same judges, and there's a good rhythm to it. So that's, I think myself, this is a kind of a positive thing for the city, and I would think that there's more coming. So
yeah, good.
And Adam, are we doing these as separate items, or are we tying it together with the junk on the sidewalk? Is this all going to be kind of the same study? It's one general item related to personal belongings, but I would treat these as the potential for two separate ordinances. One to address shopping carts specifically, the other one to address the storage of the storage of private property on public property. Yeah, well, before I was going to make kind of a motion and direction, but maybe it would be better. Can we hear the second part of this issue before we move this one?
Absolutely. So if there are no other questions on the shopping carts, I will move over to the personal property storage. Okay, seeing none. All right, so San Clemente Municipal Code Chapter 8.86, entitled Camping, discusses the laws related to the storage of personal property in conjunction with camping. And this section, specifically section 8.86.030, entitled Camping Procedures, Removal and Recovery of Personal Property, establishes that there is a process by which personal property that has been left, meaning abandoned, for more than 24 hours can be removed. The code specifies that, except as otherwise provided in this code or by resolution of the city council, any items left for more than 24 hours may be impounded, which provides a mechanism for some additional requirements if the city council approves it, which they did through a resolution that established a more concrete policy related to the removal of personal items back when this section of code was adopted. And what that section allows for, what that resolution allows for, is essentially a policy of removing personal items. And it breaks personal items down into two categories: essential items and non-essential items. Essential items are things like tents, a bicycle, medications, tarps, blankets, the things that somebody needs to camp and essentially to facilitate sleeping or camping on the street. Non-essential items are anything else. It's the list is not exhaustive, so there is some case by case analysis when we come across somebody's personal items. But for the most part, it's pretty clear what's essential and what's not essential. The policy also establishes that, and it goes into a bit more detail about the way notice is provided. And essentially what occurs is that we have one notice, and that notice allows us to check off a box that says city staff identified essential items, and you have 24 hours to claim and remove these items from the public right of way. Or city staff has identified non-essential items. The policy for removing non-essential items does not require that we wait 24 hours to collect them. It also does not require that we store those items. So if we come across non-essential items, and there's a caveat here that COVID has impacted the amount of contact that city staff is making with people's belongings. But with that aside, what we would typically do is collect non-essential items and discard them. So before you is consideration of an ordinance to enhance that. And based on what some other cities are doing, the differences that I see are really that an additional ordinance would not require that we wait 24 hours to address essential items left on public property. Anything beyond that I believe gets a little bit too legally jeopardizing when it comes to Martin v. Boise. But that's about as far as I've seen other cities go. So if there are some specific questions on that, I'd be more than happy to answer it.
Now, Adam, correct me on this, or maybe you can state it again. So the proposal is on the addition to this municipal code section that it would not require a 24-hour wait on essential items, or
that, in my research and experience with this topic, that's the only thing that I see as an opportunity to enhance what our existing code already allows, or I should say what it already prohibits. So there's no actual direction for how to prohibit personal storage on public property, sidewalks, and other public places. That's the only thing that I can really see as an avenue for increasing the restrictions that are currently in place in our code. There may be some other opportunities. But I'm thinking from a pragmatic standpoint, what would actually lead to additional effectiveness, and so that seems like the most logical way to do it. But it's up for your discussion.
Does this deal with the vehicles of any kind, or can Tyler lose his skateboard and stuff like that on off the side of the street?
Hopefully.
So personal property, I should say this, our ordinance covers camping, and it relates to personal property related to people who are camping. A prohibition of personal property on public property would be difficult to enforce, because essentially everybody that goes to a park with a blanket or a cooler would be sitting there with their personal property. So I believe what we're trying to do is tailor this to be abandoned property, which is how it currently works. As far as vehicles are concerned, that's a bit out of my area of expertise. So,
Well, I mean, a vehicle of any kind, including a skateboard, is essential.
Yeah.
You know, a means of transportation is essential, so we probably wouldn't be picking up Tyler's skateboard.
I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to items stored in a vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate or not. That is something that we do address, and so we will look for other opportunities to address the vehicle park. But I think if that's what you're referring to, Bill, then it's a difficult thing to address storage of items in vehicles, as long as they're legally parked.
Okay.
For clarification on this whole concept here, because you mentioned the Martin versus Boise, and if we can get back to some common sense, Martin versus Boise addressed the fact that you can't keep somebody from basically sleeping on public property or camping. And the case stemmed out of somebody coming to visit do child visitations in another city. He didn't have enough money to stay in a hotel, so he stayed in a public park. And the city of Boise started harassing him, and that's how the case started. The court just wants to make sure that if the city can't facilitate a shelter for somebody that needs shelter, that they can camp or sleep on public property. And where it stemmed from there is now all of a sudden it's stemmed into now we have to allow people to reside on public property, which the court never intended. The wording in the case is very clear, but that's where we are. So let's go back to what we're really trying to stop. And we know we can't stop somebody that needs a place to sleep and lays down on the sidewalk or in a park or somewhere, and they have to rest. What we're trying to, I think, address is, and I was going to ask you about this further, because I think we have a case here that you might have addressed, is somebody setting up residence in a public, place with all their belongings and, storing their furniture and all of that. So certainly, I think no matter what ordinance municipal code we initiate, a lot of it is common sense. I certainly don't see the OCSD. And I doubt seriously if our park rangers or code enforcement would come upon somebody who is really sleeping because they have no other place to go and would do anything to harass that person or take their essential property. So I think that will take care of itself. But we did have a case of a lady down at Los Molinos in El Camino Real that had about 25 feet of personal property stored on the sidewalk for a long period of time. And that's what I was going to ask. I've seen her walking around and I haven't seen her property. Was this something that the city addressed, Adam?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. We did address multiple issues in her area. But as far as what happened with her personal property, I can provide an update at a later time when I do a little bit of research, but I hesitate to say that we stored any of that property or discarded it because I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, because there was a lot of it, but somehow it looks like it's gotten taken care of somehow, at least off the sidewalk. So again, I'll circle back. I'm not sure that the 24-hour thing for essential property is unreasonable notification, really, you know? I mean, because we're not dealing with people that sleep like at 10 at night till 6 in the morning all the time too. That's the gray areas. Different people sleep at different times, you know? So it might make it difficult without that 24-hour notice to grab somebody's, you know, camping stuff. Does anybody else think that 24 hours is necessarily unreasonable amount of, you know, should it be less? I don't know practically, maybe if we can make it less.
Yeah, if I could comment on that too, it seems that the way that the code reads now, so it is 24 hours for the essential property. And yeah, if we started to go down from there, I think it'd be the question of what actually constitutes abandonment. If somebody leaves that property behind for a period of time, you know, how do we determine what that period of time is? 24 hours, as you said, Rick, I agree with you that seems like a reasonable duration of time that property's been abandoned at a certain location for it to be considered actually abandoned. But anything less than that, it's kind of hard to quantify what's a reasonable amount of time to consider abandonment.
Yeah, and I would ask Adam, who's actually out there enforcing this, is there something wording in that? Let's start on the essential stuff, you know, the tent and the bicycle, the typical homeless camper. Is there anything in that part of the municipal code that we could modify that would make it easier or less problematic to enforce?
So right now, when we come across items that are abandoned, let's just assume they're all essential. You know, they could have been there for, you know, depending on how hidden this was, it could have been there for a week. Most of the time it's there for at least a couple hours. We'll post it for 24 hours from that point on. If we come back and they're there, then they've met the condition to convert their abandoned stuff into non-abandoned. They've essentially claimed it. However, the stuff is still in the same place. So there's a process of notifying people of abandoned property in the same place over and over again.
Yeah.
Do you guys
I can see opportunities potentially. I you know, off the top of my head, it's kind of hard to craft some code here, but I could see an opportunity potentially to almost require that things get moved, you know, a certain.
I was thinking the same thing. If we made it, you know, 8 hours and they moved 10 feet, now is that reestablishing a new location for 8 hours? You know, it's this is on the essential stuff. It's really going to be tough, I think, to come up with something, you know, really effective. What, you know, I think non-essential stuff, I think we have more of a chance of getting people from storing all of their belongings on the sidewalk. I think we can, it's going to be more realistic to attack that, I think.
Yes, you know, the only other thing I would say, as far as storage of items on public property that could be beneficial would be a clarification of areas that are simply not suitable for any property to be on, whether it's abandoned or otherwise. And what I can provide some examples for this. There are certain limitations to the amount of municipal codes that apply to storage of property in areas that make it inherently dangerous for the public, for the homeless themselves, for vehicular traffic, things like that. The examples are, a good one is the North Beach parking lot. So there were, and this has been an evolving issue, but over time we've had people be in parking spaces. We've had people be in that the hatched area at the end, right next to the trailhead. Those spaces are made for vehicles to drive into or to turn around into. And it's inherently dangerous to everybody involved for somebody to set up camp there. Other places that have these kinds of issues are around electrical boxes, where city staff needs access to get into to service the city. Pedestrian pathways are another one. And we do have some codes that we can use to apply to these situations. But something that would be really nice would be to identify a criteria list, codified potentially, that identifies with a compelling governmental interest for public safety, the areas of public right-of-way that are just simply like, there's no time, abandoned or otherwise, when any storage of personal items is not inherently dangerous in this.
You bring up a really great point there, and I'll give you an example of how that does work. We had a bunch of homeless that were camped next to the I think it's the Lost Surf Shop, where that kind of fence is and the drainage areas. And yes. Somebody called me on it, and so I called Lieutenant Manhart at that time and said, what's the deal? I mean, they're all camped there. And he said, that's not our property, that belongs to, and I can't remember what the state or somebody, it's their drainage area. And he called and clarified it, that said, no, they're trespassing there. They can't be anywhere near there. It's a runoff drain thing, whatever. And OCSD moved them right on out of there, and they haven't been back since. So that there was a real entity that they, due to public safety, nobody can be there. That's a really good thought, Adam, on identifying some of these and incorporating that. I think we could have a huge impact in that way. That's really thinking.
And the last thing I want to do is make it seem like the city of San Clemente is not a safe place. But, we have tsunami warning signs down by the beach. We have a number of flood channels throughout town. We have narrow sidewalks in certain areas. There are really, the more you think about it, there are a lot of areas where, people camping or in sleeping, especially being asleep in certain areas, puts them in a tremendous place of risk. And so staff would be more than in favor of looking at a potential update to those kinds of codes.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I hate to dedicate a ton of because that sounds like it might be time consuming. I hopefully maybe it's already been looked at a little bit in somewhere, Public Works, or maybe it's been kicked around already, so we're not starting from square one.
Getting back to what the purpose at hand right now, it's essentially providing a recommendation to the city council that this is something that they could look into. And I can see that recommendation having some basic tenets of either the purpose or the way in which these ordinances can be enhanced. But I'll tell you, for public right-of-way, the city actually, we put a lot of thought into this when we created the chapter 5.50, our sidewalk vending ordinance. This was in response to a state law that essentially just gave carte blanche to sidewalk vendors. And we had to look at all of our public space and identify, somebody with a cart selling a bunch of stuff, where is this going to be a safety concern? And it turned out there's a lot of places where that activity is a safety concern. And so looking at that ordinance staff would have, that gives us a leg up on this kind of thought process and research. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and because right in the Martin versus Boise case, it says that the court isn't saying that at no time can a homeless person be arrested for camping and then they listed issues of health and safety issues. There was some mitigating factors. So I don't think, not that we're out identifying everything, every park is a safety issue. We certainly wouldn't want to do that. But we probably really do have areas like you mentioned that at least we could incorporate that would probably be really good to do looking forward.
Yes.
So what would you like us to do at this point? What are you looking for from us today?
So, I think at this point, a good step right now would be to get concurrence from the subcommittee that these are two areas of potential improvement. And I'm thinking maybe based on this conversation, we could forward the discussion to the Public Safety Committee for more of an enforcement impact type review. Yeah. And if the Public Safety Committee would like to forward a recommendation to the City Council, it's only going to be like another week and a half until the next Joint Homeless Subcommittee meeting. So if they crafted that kind of recommendation, then we could run it by the subcommittee one more time, unless the subcommittee just would like to, make a determination that yes, you would like to recommend this to the council, and then when staff could potentially just combine the two recommendations into one. But I would prefer to have the subcommittee direct how they would like to see this processed.
Yeah, my only question at this point, based on the conversation, is whether on this second item we're going in the direction of storage of property in areas or walkways or what have you that could be potentially dangerous, as opposed to any kind of camping even while the owner of the property is present. It seems that the direction based on our agenda is just storage. And so I would assume that's it kind of, if we add sort of some flavor to the code to state that, there's a specification of certain areas that are dangerous. If somebody stores their property in those types of areas, then that property could be treated as non-essential or in the same way as non-essential property would be treated. And not need the 24-hour time duration to be considered abandoned. Is that right? Does that sound right to everybody else?
Yeah.
One option I'll throw out there is if we're talking about making a recommendation, this was duly noticed on a public hearing, and if the subcommittee would like to make a motion and take a vote on one, whether to recommend these two items, and two, if there are any specific ideas that should be incorporated, or I should say the level of focus for those two items. I think the shopping carts one is rather straightforward. So, but for the personal storage one, you could make a motion that yes, we should look at enhancing the code for specific things, rather than just a blanket yes or no. And that way, the staff has some idea of what to incorporate in the eventual recommendation getting to the city council.
Okay.
Now, that it may be a bit too much to think about that right now. So the other option would be to push the recommendation to the next meeting. And
Well, no, I think I'd like to make a recommendation to push it forward now. I think we're all kind of conceptually kind of on the same page here. We need to look at addressing, giving the city some more resources to deal with the shopping carts out of parking lots and on sidewalks. And I think we've kind of addressed that and have a good idea how to do that. And then as far as the property on sidewalks, and I think we're looking at mostly non-essential property being the biggest source of problem here, and or essential property in locations where it should never be, where period. Is that kind of where we're looking? Somebody help me here.
Yeah, I don't know if we could necessarily come up right now with what those locations would be, but
No, we can't do that, but I think we can make a motion that staff and the Public Safety Committee address these issues. That yes, we agree that there needs to be enhancements to the city municipal code to address these issues. I mean, I think that's all we're saying. We're not saying specifically what those are going to be. We're just approving the fact that yes, they should be addressed.
Yeah, we're saying we just want to encourage them to look further at this question because we believe it has merit. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. and then we could add the friendly amendments later as far as the identifying the locations that are specifically never to be encumbered with property, essential or non-essential. I mean, that could be something that we could do down the line, or staff could make the recommendation down the line where those locations should be. Are we getting there?
Yeah.
Does that sound correct there, Adam?
Yeah, Adam's he's either frozen or he's completely stymied on this.
no, I think you're 100% right. The council will direct the resources of staff to draft ordinances. If those have impacts that need to be reviewed by subcommittees or committees, they'll go back to the committees at that point. Right now, we're talking about coming back to the council with a recommendation whether to move forward on enhancing those two sections of the code. But I think it's smart to provide context for the general direction of those enhancements.
Okay, so
and what you've described essentially is that it's a 30,000 foot view of a way to tailor any potential updates.
Okay, so maybe we make this in two separate motions on the carts and the other, just for simplicity. And I think my motion would be that we, as a subcommittee, agree that the enhancement, the possible enhancement of municipal code sections that would allow code enforcement to more effectively deal with the issue of shopping carts on public property be addressed. Can I keep it that simple? Would that be okay, or do you need more?
I think that's simple, just right there.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
I like the hand raising if that's
Oh yeah,
for everybody. All right, 4-0.
Okay, now this second one's going to be more difficult. That as a subcommittee, I'm talking out loud so somebody can throw something in if they want to. Again, we agree that the possibility of, and I'm going to say enhanced municipal code sections, because I think we already have municipal code sections, that enhance municipal code sections regarding both essential and non-essential private property on public property be addressed by staff.
The storage.
Recovery and storage of, I guess we could put in there. Is that?
Well, I think what you mean is if essential or non-essential property is stored on public property.
Right, the storage of, right, okay. Let me do this again. Well, it sounds like you got a good handle on it. Why don't you make the motion, Tyler?
All right. So move that this committee approved staff to investigate the enhancement of municipal code addressing the storage of private property on public property of essential and non-essential items, to specify how city, this is hard, Rick.
It is.
To specify with more detail areas that could be considered a hazard to the public if stored, if property is stored on those locations.
Do you have, and with just one, a friendly amendment, if we could put staff/public safety committee, because I think they're gonna, it's gonna have to circle back there at some point.
Yeah.
Also, I would include in that motion that what is being approved is also what the subcommittee would recommend to the city council.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm not sure if I understand.
So that's.
Do you have enough in there, Adam, to word that in something that will look right?
So I'm going to just clarify this motion as a recommendation to enhance the San Clemente Municipal Code regarding private property storage on public property to specify specifically hazardous areas and dangers to the public welfare.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
I'll second that.
Bowden motion.
Yeah. Raise our hand.
And that's 4. Awesome. Okay.
Ooh.
We're agreeable here.
All right.
That's a little harder than I thought, Rick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you see why I passed it off. I took the shopping cart, so didn't want any part of the other one.
Okay, Chair Walsh.
Yes, we're ready.
I believe we're done with that item unless there's some additional questions for staff.
I think we're good. Okay, let's move to the unfinished business. Okay, Adam and Tyler and Rick, information gathering and presentation.
Yeah, I can go ahead. So, really the way that this investigation has gone, I'd say that our 2 items are blending more than I anticipated. So the information gathering of putting together sort of a registry or a resource guide is proving to have been largely already done with the resources that were available on the city's website as it pertains to that. And I shared that at our last meeting. So really at this point, I think the focus has shifted to the stakeholders group. And along with that, I think at some point, Rick and I could probably put together a more detailed contact list for the homeless outreach staff person that gets hired. sort of a short list of who's who, but really I think a lot of the who's who will actually be on this stakeholders group that we're looking to form. And so just an update on my end, and I'll let Rick, maybe talk about who he's spoken to, but I got confirmation from Elizabeth at FAM to be a part of this group. I've reached out to CityNet and Mercy House and haven't heard back. I know the city is not contracted with either of those right now, but they may have some interest in being a part of this group. So we'll see kind of what they say. I also spoke with the president of iHope, and she was very interested in being a part of this group. Her name's Kathy Dominicini, and she's very well connected and knowledgeable about kind of all things related to homeless outreach. She was actually a part of Dana Point's task force that formed their community work plan on homelessness. And so she's kind of well aware of that process, and she was really happy with this idea and thought it would be valuable for us to put together this group that meets at some frequency, and still need to make contact. Rick and I had discussed having kind of an at-large citizen representative, perhaps from the group that's been formed by Donna Vadrine and others. And I know they have a meeting coming up this coming Monday. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make that. So Gary, I think you were maybe going to go to that, and perhaps you could mention that to them, just say we're putting together a stakeholders group, and if anybody would like to be a part of it, maybe have representation from that group on it. And then the last two things were a representative from a faith group. So just kind of representing all faith groups in San Clemente, looking actively for who that would be. Doesn't seem like there's any active, collaborative or group of faith groups that meets at any frequency. So we'd almost be kind of forming that, but even just an active church that's active on homeless outreach would be good to have as representation. And then having a business rep. So I have an email out to the DBAs related to that as well. So I think that probably in the next month or so, maybe by our next meeting, we will probably have enough buy-in to try to schedule the first stakeholders group meeting and get everybody together. And I think Rick has also been reaching out to others like OCSD and marine safety and state parks and whatnot.
We're trying to just put together anything that has a stake in the homeless situation here, and I think Tyler also talked about the fact that getting the stakeholders together initially is going to be really, really important, and I think in the long run it's going to be more of a networking kind of situation. I don't see these stakeholders meeting once a month. I mean, they do whatever they want, but maybe quarterly or something just to touch base, but at least everybody will be in the database. They'll all have access to each other and maybe have a little bit better idea about what participation they have in servicing the homeless. So, and like Tyler says, I think we're really close to putting together at least this list of who we believe the stakeholders are. And then at that point, Adam, I was going to ask you, they do need to meet. Is this something, so is the city council, this is part of our work plan, but does the city council have to reapprove this before, like, say, we try to get these people together into a meeting?
Depends on resource needs. What I can do is, if this can wait until the next meeting, let me look into that question specifically, and I will have an answer for you.
Well, I think what we'll do then is Tyler and I will try to come up with this list. I mean, maybe we can put it on a PowerPoint so everybody can kind of look at it and see what it looks like. And will be what we say, this is what we think it looks like at this particular point. And then what action wants to be taken on it, then we'll wait and see what they want.
Okay, I can update. If I can get the information sooner, I should be able to update the subcommittee beforehand. But yeah, as far as making any decisions based on that information, that would probably have to wait until the next meeting. So I'll try to provide you what I can beforehand.
Cool. Thanks, Adam.
Now, is that, does that kind of include your communication coordination also? That seemed like it did, but
Yeah, it does, and just because there's kind of a blend. You know, the only other thing, as far as information gathering and presentation goes, you know, a lot of that already been done. However, you know, there is a component to that seems to indicate that we could have people come in and speak to us at certain times. So we could, you know, we could certainly ask, you know, FAM or even IHOPE or anybody really, if to come in and speak to us about whatever it is. We've also been interested in getting in touch with Be Well, which is the facility up in
Orange. It's
up
an
in-
orange.
right, exactly. That's been formed, so we may be able to get a representative from that. So, you know, if this committee had an interest in bringing people in to come speak with us and maybe educate the public that's watching these meetings on what they have going on, that's something that we could kind of add to what we're doing as well.
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. We'll move on to best practices. Bill and I were trying to get the data information, and I may have told you guys this. We were pretty stymied in that because everybody basically, couple things. There's a national database that's run by our Orange County Health Agency called HMIS, and that's where everybody enters in all the data that they share in this continuum of care, and you have to be enrolled in it, and we are not enrolled in it. So the city of San Clemente isn't. So until we're enrolled, we won't be able to get that information. So I've been told by the city manager that we will have that enrollment by the time the new homeless outreach coordinator is on board. So we'll rely on that. But basically, because of other areas of personal data and stuff, nobody is willing to share the data. And the sheriffs have basically told us that we're not going to share our data with you just because of the sheriffs and it's county. And so they don't share it. So, anyways, we've been a little stymied in that. But we have been looking into overall homeless strategies and such, and with different cities, and we're finding out a lot of good information about directions we're going to be recommending and such. So each city really does it a little different, you know, and they kind of coordinate their efforts, but it is a coordinated effort for sure. So within each city. So we will be making some recommendations on that. We have a long way to go before we get together and say, okay, this is the best, this is the you know, this won't work, this will work. So we're ways off on that.
Yeah.
So that's the best I can tell you on that right now, without, you know, having something go out there and people going, oh, they're going this direction, they're going to do this. You know, I don't want to say that. So yeah, we're waiting. So anyways, so I think that's that on the reports, Adam, on that.
Yeah, I think we've spent a good deal of time with, we spent a couple hours now with Sam, with Elizabeth, and with Mary, trying to talk through what their ongoing role is going to be and what it is now. They're up to 10 people who are involved in case management now in that shop. So I think whatever we envision as kind of a way forward in terms of best practices, that is going to be something we can learn a lot about. And then we've gotten some names of other people around the county who can serve as a great resource to us in terms of what's worked and what hasn't worked, and I think we're still trying to get some groundwork on that. But like the assistant city manager right now in Costa Mesa, um, I'd like to, Gary, get a meeting with her, because she was the person, I think, in charge of the whole homeless operation for the county for a while, and really has a pretty substantial knowledge base about, questions like, do we put up a shelter? Do we have permanent, long-term housing considerations? I mean, what should we be aiming the city toward? And once we kind of get some basics established, then I think best practices make more sense to me anyway. Otherwise, we're kind of shooting in the dark, and we really don't know what the city council really has up their sleeve in terms of their own policies and leanings. But I just hate to get us too involved in too much working with another group, even if it's only a network group, because it should be pretty clear what we want this group to do, and I'm not sure the mandate is all that clear yet. But we did offer to help on the interview of the new staff person, and so we wanted to be available to provide expertise or questions or anything that could be helpful to the HR function there, because it's going to be probably till July until we have somebody in place there, I would think, Adam. That's just kind of a rambling. But we did meet with the, I think you guys did too, with the Sergeant Bill.
Bert,
Bert, yeah, and also Molly, and we learned an awful lot about what's going on right now. So that was really very helpful. But those kind of meetings where we get people actually out in the field who have an experience with all of this, that where we can help provide some ideas and maybe even be the message carriers to the council. I think once we begin to get a little more homogeneous in terms of where we're headed policy-wise, I think we're going to be in good shape. But I wouldn't get too far down the path of enhancing our committee very far until we're really clear on what we want by way of additional input. I don't know. Does that sound right? Let me just.
Well, I know one thing that came out of, and all of us, I think, have realized this now, is that right now for the sheriffs to refer somebody to a homeless shelter, we know that the sheriffs have the county broken up into 3, what they call SPAs, acronym, and the South County, which turns everything from Irvine south. There is only one homeless shelter, and that's in Laguna Beach. And really that's pretty much for just Laguna Beach residents, and it's already full. So in all reality, there are no shelters in for single male, at least, in South Orange County, starting from Irvine south. So it is just something that will have to be worked on, because
Yes.
yeah. Anyways, okay, so move on to reports of committee members and staff. Adam, you have anything from staff?
Just an update. The city council last night was discussing the committee and commission appointments, and they want to look into some things with the planning commission, and so essentially they delayed the expiration of committee members' terms for 60 days. Beyond the date that they would expire, which was July 31st. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And that's all I've got.
I've got a couple of things. Also, last night at the city council meeting, and it was, Bill, you're right. I think July is the earliest. It looks like we're getting our outreach person, according to our interim city manager. So Councilmember Duncan brought up the fact that that's too long to wait without some kind of outreach program in the city, and he wanted to bring CityNet back in. There was some discussion about the effectiveness of CityNet, and so I think they're looking at possible contacting Mercy House to see if they could do a stopgap for a couple of months, give us some outreach help, of course, if we paid for it. So that's kind of in limbo. I don't know if everyone's aware of the RENA issue. We have RENA is a bean counting outfit that was contracted by the state, and it's the regional housing needs allocation. And what they've done is they've gone in, they figured out each city in the state of California how much more affordable housing we need to have, and that number's been we were given a number, and if we were going to appeal it, that had to have been done before, and that time is run out. So we have a number based on a bunch of different things, and we need to, the state has ordered us to identify property, how we're going to do it, how we're going to get this affordable housing. And so this is it's going to really rely huge on the new planning commission with the land use issues, but it's also a homeless issue also. That's part of the thing. So, going forward, this is going to be another box that we're going to have to tick. Plus, there's a ton of bills in the Senate right now that affect homelessness and housing. The one bill is to take all HOA's power away from how a resident rents his house. In other words, if you have a house that's in an HOA, you can rent all 5 bedrooms if you're out separately, and your HOA won't be able to say anything about it. There's also numerous bills in there that are going to allow the city to have no power. If somebody wants to come in and scrape a house, they can build a duplex, and the city will have no power in saying, well, no, it's a single family only zoning. All these, lots of bills. There's about 12 bills in the Senate right now that involve housing and permanent supportive housing, low income housing, and just density in housing. So it's going to be really interesting what happens. City of Los Angeles, council person has just made a motion that they turn all city beach parking lots into homeless, not shelters, not facilities, but just camps like we had at Camp Pico. And that's Dockweiler State Beach, Venice Beach. Just open them up and just let as many homeless want to come in and camp there with no facilities, no nothing, just a spot to camp, which
crazy.
Seems like it might be we knew it was problematic, and we had rules at Camp Pico and facilities, and it was still problematic. So these, and it's only going to travel out from there, so this, I know on our work plans, very narrow, and that's good. But in the future, the homeless crisis and emergency is really, really expanding. So it's just something to keep apprised of. It's very, very interesting how the politics are moving so quickly in our state.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Adam, what do we need to do for the next meeting? You mentioned something.
Yeah, so
Confirm the date.
somebody just needs to make a motion to adjourn and then make sure that they indicate that the next meeting is going to be held on May 11th at 3 p.m.
Motion to adjourn our meeting to our next meeting, May 11th at 3 p.m.
Second.
Hi.
Okay.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Adam, for straightening out that our little mess there on the ordinances. I appreciate all the help.
Excellent work. Excellent work from everybody.
Adam, as always.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Have a great rest of the week, guys.
Take care. Thank you.